Welcome to the Let's Feel Good podcast. I'm your host, Annie. After nearly a decade of asking, why don't I feel good? I ultimately discovered the answers through simple changes to my daily habits. I've spent years healing myself and investing in health and wellness companies tackling the chronic disease epidemic. Along the way, I realized something important. True health isn't built through cold plunges, IV drips, or $30 smoothies. It's the small, everyday choices that add up, shaping both how we feel today and our long term health. Let's Feel Good is here to keep it simple, giving you practical tips and swaps that compound into a lifetime of vibrant health. Thanks for being here. Let's feel good together. Welcome back to the Let's Feel Good podcast. We have a very special guest today, one of my close friends and the founder of the Wellery. Alex and I went to college together, and then we both lived in New York City after graduating when we were in the thick of corporate finance. Alex was in investment banking at JP Morgan and ended up shifting full-time into the wellness space, being driven by her own personal health journey. Alex's story, as well as her mission and vision behind what she's building at the Wellery, is amazing, and I know it will resonate deeply with all of you today. I'm very excited to into it with you. Let's start off. Do you want to introduce yourself, Alex, and we'll dive in?
Sure. Well, thank you so much for that kind intro. I am super excited to be here. You touched on a lot of it, but my name's Alex, originally from Oregon. Annie and I went to college together, and we spent some time in New York. Like she said, I worked in corporate. I had about a decade long health journey that I'm sure we will dive into, but that really was the motivator for making, some big lifestyle changes and ultimately founding the Wellery. I'm a national board certified health and wellness coach. And, my mission is to help people navigating complex chronic illness or even just the overwhelm of the modern wellness world to, connect to their own inner wisdom, their well, which is what I call it. We'll probably dive into that as well. But curate a path of wellness that actually works for them.
I love it. It's amazing. Yeah. So Alex and I, we went to Cornell. I was in Boston for a few years and then ended up moving to New York. Alex lived in New York City right after graduating in investment banking at JP Morgan. Very high stress, very go, go, go. I was in private equity venture capital, so also in the kind of fast paced ecosystem. Personal journey that I've talked a lot about my Substack and my Instagram and on other podcasts is went off the birth control pill and I didn't get a period. I felt inflamed. I had eczema. I had psoriasis. I had gut issues. I just didn't feel good all the time. I was so anxious. I would get rashes. I would feel, just not myself. And when I went off the pill, I didn't get a period. And I was like, what is this? What is the root cause of all these conditions? And I'd go to my doctor and I'd get a lot of different prescriptions, but no kind of root cause diagnosis or understanding of how all of these different symptoms that I'm experiencing are totally interconnected. And it was really hard for me. I'm working, at the time at a Series A fund, investing in, ironically, health and wellness companies. But I was working until 12 at night, 1 in the morning, all day Sunday. And I was so obsessed with trying to figure out my own health and also trying to keep up with this fast-paced environment and do well and succeed. But I felt so horrible. And it was this constant battle of like trying to find the answers, trying to carve out time to see all these different doctors, trying to figure out what was going on with my hormones. And then also falling into the wellness trap that I think in a city like New York or LA or Boston or Miami is just so vibrant. There's so many smoothie places and supplement shops and, IV drip places and pricey meditation studios. I spent so much of my time and money using all of the extra time that I had going to these services, hoping that they'd heal me in really no time in my body. And Alex, I know we share kind of a similar journey in that sense of maybe outsourcing our health to external factors, whether they're supplements or healers or answers from doctors and practitioners, and then also trying to keep up in these environments that really give us no time to go inward.
Well, first, I just want to give younger you and me a little bit of grace because we were trying, the best we could with what we had and we didn't know any better. And like you said, in that environment, we're shown all these shiny things. We're seeing doctors that are giving us kind of shrugged shoulders, no answers. So we're taking it on ourselves and we're looking out to everything else, right? And all these things that we've now realized are, more like performing health instead of actually connecting to our health. Those were what we were leaning towards. In my case, my symptoms started much younger than when I actually started to, really pay attention to them. In high school, it started with GI symptoms, a number of concussions from sports, and I shove it under the rug a little bit. I'll, stop eating gluten, that's fine. Go to college, ignore it, try to engage the best I could, with school, with social life, with sports. And things started to get progressively worse, right? And I as you can probably imagine, fall into the type A perfectionist category. So I wanted to be the best in every department of my life. And, at the time, any physical health symptoms just didn't seem like they had a place in my life. I was like, you know what, I'll deal with that later. Let me get this internship. Let me get this job. Let me get this A. Let me go to this event. And post college, when I'm, in the real world, I'll deal with this. And you can probably imagine it didn't get much better. It actually became a lot harder the longer I waited. And then moved to New York, obviously high stress in investment banking and wanting to show my best self, but put my best foot forward, networking, working, unbelievably crazy hours, as everyone who knows investment banking is familiar with. And these symptoms really started to scream at me. And still, I ignored them until I couldn't anymore. And that's when I started to scramble. I'm a good problem solver. That's why I was good at this job. That's why I was good at school. And it started to stress me out. And I think you can relate to this, Annie. I wasn't good at solving this problem. And that's what I looked at it. I looked at it as this big problem to solve. I'm like, wait, I am good at fixing things. Why can't I fix myself? One, it's frustrating to have all these complex symptoms and not have a doctor be able to piece it together. You feel isolated, but then you feel like you're the advocate, you're the researcher, you're the scientist. So you're trying to piece everything together. You're trying to find different doctors, you're trying to find different healers, you're trying to find different modalities to fix it yourself. And I think that's a lot of pressure. And I think it ended up kind of pushing me, and can't speak for you, but if you can relate, down, the wrong direction for a little bit of time. I don't know if it was necessarily avoidable at the time because we didn't have that, information and the resources that we do now. And I think that's, part of what's catapulted both of us into this work and this messaging. It's like, wait, let's show up as the people that we needed, especially 5 years ago, right?
Yeah, completely. You were always successful. You went to Cornell, you played a Division 1 sport, you were top of your class, got a very prestigious job on Wall Street, you were, killing it at your job. You were always successful and you always could solve something. You have a very smart analytical brain, you're very driven. You were always able to figure things out. Your health stuff really crept up and started affecting your day-to-day life. What did that feel like when you couldn't figure it out? And you had to leave your mind and go into your body, and maybe in a way that you had never done before. Did that affect your confidence? Did that affect the way that you viewed yourself? Maybe your personality? I know for me, I was the same way. I was always like, if I want something, I can figure out a path to get there. But with your health, you can't control yourself into health. You have to feel your body into health. You have to learn how to nurture yourself. You have to learn how to ebb and flow with it and give it grace and compassion rather than a static plan that is, a linear path to healing. And it can be a very uncomfortable shift for a brain that has always worked one way and now kind of needs to learn how to work another way. You're in investment banking, you're in New York, you're starting to understand that you have to tap into your body to really understand what's going on here. And maybe that all these doctors and all of these different supplements or solutions aren't going to be the answer, that you are, but a different version of you is. How did that affect the rest of your life? And honestly, how did that affect the way that you had viewed yourself up until?
Oh man, it's changed my life, and it was really hard. I think as someone who is really good at intellectualizing things, I had a really hard time, disconnecting the research and the doctor's appointments from like my lived experience and what my body was asking of me, or how symptoms were presenting, or the little nudges we talk about, starting to realize that those were real things, real messengers that I could actually be in conversation with. It took me a long time and it was confusing. I mean, we were in New York, like the healthcare is amazing. I had over 20 doctors at a time. I had the best cardio, I had the best neuro, rheumatologist. I even went to the Cleveland Clinic Center for Functional Medicine, right? Like I thought I was doing it all right. I was getting so much more information. I was collecting more and more diagnoses. I still had a lot of question marks. And I realized that the more diagnoses or tests I took weren't actually helping me move forward. I tried different treatments, tried Western, tried alternative, and the needle wasn't really moving. And I think we talk about this a lot, but this idea of there being hard lefts in life, I think there were a lot of signs early on that, my body was really asking to be in dialogue with me, which I think is something that we all have the ability to do if we give ourselves permission to listen. And I just felt so out of control that that didn't even seem like an option, right? So the way that I was trying to maintain control, like the control I had in all these other aspects of my life, was to keep going to the best doctors, keep collecting diagnoses, keep trying certain protocols and thinking that I could outsmart my body, which is hilarious looking back, right? Like I was trying to get ahead of it so much and I had this, very clear me versus my body mentality.
Right.
It was like, I'm smarter than my body. I have to be smarter than my body. These doctors that I'm collecting to be on my team, we all have to outsmart this thing.
Mm,
And I think the hard left was getting sicker and sicker, getting more, symptoms that were louder and louder despite the treatments that I was doing, despite all the performative wellness things that I was doing. It took me a long time to realize, whoa, my body and I have always been on the same team. We are on the same team, and I am able to be in dialogue with it in these different ways that I have to remember. I think we all knew it at some point, but I think it takes a long time to it takes a lot of intention and presence to really listen to what your body's asking. And I think I just denied it being someone who lived in my brain for
yeah.
a long, long time. That just wasn't working. It just kept not working.
And it's hard to go into your body because it requires a sense of letting go. I think that when you stay in your head, it feels like you have a false sense of control. If I'm always monitoring for a threat or if I'm always obsessing over a symptom, then maybe I can solve myself out of it. Maybe I can control my way out of this. If I never release my grip, then this doesn't slip out of my control and end up in worst case scenario that were is always top of mind for us. I think moving into your body is obviously an act of surrender. And then with that, you shift into healing and learning how to care for yourself, and your symptoms improve over time. But it can be really hard to take your hand off of it and say, I'm going to let this be and I'm going to go inward and try and listen to my body and see what it's trying to tell me. Two questions. One, what does being in your body even look like? How do you start? What is a practice that you can do to even go inside of it? I think that sometimes I feel that we only have one thing and it's our brain. It's like that there's this whole other element to our being that has so much wisdom and guidance for us. But how do you actually like go there? Like, what does that mean? It feels so abstract. And then the second question would be, how did your perception or attitude or the way that you were managing your journey with your chronic illnesses and your life change when you started to shift out of your head and into your body?
Great questions. Well, one, I would say a big tool for me was working with a somatic therapist. There's so many things that you can do on your own to try to reconnect to your body. In my case, I was so far disconnected from myself. I couldn't even connect to certain parts of my body when I tried to think about them or focus on them. And having a professional help me with that was great. I think that some of the things that I come back to over and over again are body scans. That's, where maybe you lay down in bed and you imagine light or energy moving through your body around different points. Try to think of your fingers and can you feel a little bit of energy or can you visualize a little bit of energy in your hand? I think that's a cool practice. I think that sitting in stillness in general doesn't have to be quiet necessarily, it just has to be not, being an autopilot. Maybe it is physically sitting down in meditation. Maybe it's taking the subway to work and not listening to music and just trying to be with yourself. And more often than not, the more time and space that you give yourself in that stillness and that silence, messages do come up. So that's a commitment that I always come back to. So I always try to give myself that space because there are always things that are going to come up. I think it can be really hard if you've been disconnected for a long time, whether that's because of years of chronic illness or symptoms, or if you've dealt with trauma in the past. So I think you have to be gentle with yourself when you're trying to make that shift for sure. And if professional help is something that fits into, what makes sense for you, it certainly did for me and it was certainly helpful. But it's a lot easier said than done, right? Like just get out of your head and into your body. Like if that were easy, we'd all be doing it. We'd all be so embodied. We'd all be so connected to all the things that come up for us. But it's hard and it's hard even when you practice it. It's such a practice to keep returning to it. So there are certain tools, we'll go into this, I'm sure. I call it everyone has a well, right? part of that is your intuition. It is the messages that come up from your body. It's this abundance of resource that's innate to you, but it's also this active resource that we all have that we have to replenish with tools, with providers, people, products, whatever it is that connects you to yourself. And those somatic tools, those are part of my well, and those are things that I tap into pretty often. And then your second question, just about, correct me if I'm wrong here, this is about like general mindset shift and having, gotten a little bit out of my head.
Yeah. So, say you're still in the same job, you're still dealing with the same symptoms, but previously you're all in your head trying to solve it. And then you start making the shift to be more embodied, to listen to your body, to tap into your inner wisdom. How did that display externally? How did that change the way that you were still living the same life, but just with a little bit of a different mindset around it? What
Yeah,
did you notice?
I think, well, something to make clear, um, the idea of connecting to your body and being embodied or being able to listen to the messages and the symptoms that come up is not separate from critical thinking and taking action. In my case, the missing piece was just the fact that I had zero dialogue with my body, and it was only, okay, let's try to solve this, let's try to find the best doctors, let's try to do all the research myself and connect all the dots. Like, of course there is an active component to this, especially when you're dealing with complex illness, but for me, the it wasn't landing anywhere, right? Like, I would be on a prescription protocol or an herbal protocol or doing acupuncture or whatever, and I had no means of feedback to these providers who were, doing the best with what they could and
Mm.
with their training, and I was a complex case. I had a really hard time even understanding if something was helping me or hurting me because I just shut off, like, all communication. Any symptom was just like, "Oh, let's get rid of that, let's get rid of that."
Yes.
You know?
Yep.
Like, was the medication working for me?
Yeah.
I don't even know. Like, I that was such a missing piece for me. So, there was a lot of weight taken off and, like, freedom, obviously work, but freedom in this idea that, like, I'm part of this. Like, I have agency, and that's different from, like, hypervigilance and control, right? But having that through line to my body and having a feedback loop that I could understand, because these providers, these healers, these friends or whoever it was were not in my body. So having that piece just opened up so much for me, you know? And it also helped me realize, like, what really wasn't landing and what I was holding on to just because I was scared, like certain types of treatments or certain performative New York City wellness things, right? Like, I was just throwing stuff at a wall and I didn't realize that I was the wall and that I could actually, like, you know, have a role in determining whether something was helpful or not. I was just so outsourced
Mhm.
that I was like, someone knows better than me. So let them throw this stuff at me. And I don't even need to know how it's working, if it's working. But at some point, I'll just wake up and I'll be better. And I'm like, wait, there is an active role I play here. It sounds so simple, but it's really not, you know?
Right.
Like, I was absolutely trying my best in the, minuscule time slots that I had while I was working a really demanding job. I spent all of my time at doctor's offices. I don't know if I could have really changed it at that point in time, but things started to move, things started to open up a little bit, and I became more aware of especially changes I needed to make in my life when I realized my, somatic active role in, being a human and being a patient and navigating this challenge in life. It was really hard to do in banking. I was really sick for a long time, had a lot of ER visits, a lot of different variations of my body screaming at me that a change needed to be made in those jobs. I always bucket myself as a highly sensitive person, and I think that my bucket was getting fuller and fuller. So my capacity for stress and for removing the things that were helping me, like sleep and nutritious meals, getting rid of those things just made my bucket overflow so quick. And so I was a little bit more predisposed, I guess I would say, to having these big flares as a result of the job. I don't want to sit here and say that a demanding job
Right.
is the reason that I was sick. There are so many reasons that I was sick, right? But being able to have a conversation with myself and look at my life objectively, right? I ended up making a switch, stayed within the bank to impact finance, which was a role I was more values aligned with. but it also was something that worked better with my schedule, with my needing to find care and treatment, and my needing to prioritize certain things like sleep, food, movement, mindfulness, these things that were becoming abundantly clear that they mattered in my path forward.
And it's really important to recognize too that, if you don't feel well and you're overwhelmed and you're navigating something, whether it's physical, whether it's mental, whether it's just knowing you need a change, but you're not in the position to just quit your job and go start a company or quit your job and go travel the world for 6 months. Of course, it all sounds amazing, but it's life and we have to, pay our bills, and
Right.
sometimes we can't change our situation overnight. So I'd be curious, Alex, what would be your few tips or suggestions for people that are in high stress, really busy lives? Maybe they're, a mom of young kids, or maybe they're in a role like investment banking, or maybe they're just trying to juggle it all and also try and tap into their body and sort through how they're feeling and eventually move towards changes that lead them into more alignment and feeling better. And what can you do on the day to day? What are like the basic principles that make your current situation more manageable on your way to getting there?
Yeah, that's a great question, great point, and I think it's really important not to just spread the message that if you wanna be well, you need to go move to the mountains,
Yeah,
and that sure, that'd be great. Live on land and wake up without an alarm and not have to work a corporate job, like, that's silly. One,
completely.
it's important that you have aspirations for yourself and that you work hard towards something you care about, and if that involves going down a path like investment banking, then there are things that you can integrate into your day to find one balance. But also, if you're navigating something like a chronic health issue, you can really prioritize certain things and fit them in a way that makes sense with your life and your schedule, which is a very unique life and schedule. I think in my example, there was absolutely opportunity for me to integrate some of these things that I'll get into, but I just refused to uh, change anything. I thought that, if I just found enough external help, I wouldn't have to make any shifts in my current routine or in how I approach my career, right? I think Let's Feel Good is actually a very good resource for this, for the little swaps we can make, the little shifts we can make in our day, in our products, in our routines. Your free time is limited
Right.
for sure in a job like this. And it's sometimes hard to plan when that free time comes up. But I think something that helped me in my career change, I mean, it's still an intense job, obviously, but a little bit different than investment banking, was trying to determine what was non negotiable for me,
Yeah.
um, and fitting that into my limited free time, right? Whether that's connection, whether that's mindfulness, stress management, whether it's nutritious food, pick a few pillars that you feel really called to, and you can experiment with that for sure. And also, of course, see how it lands in your body and how you're responding to it. But let's say that, mindfulness is something that you need to prioritize. And, you can go a long time and blame the job for having zero time to be able to meditate for 20 minutes. And maybe that's true. You don't have 20 minutes of free time, but maybe you have 2 minutes in between calls where you can do 4 rounds of 4-7-8
Mhm.
breathing. We just did 4-7-8 breathing
Yeah.
before this call.
Alex, I will say I typically do a very quick box breathing, like 4 in, hold for 4, 4 out. Alex led me through a 4-7-8 breathing before we hit record, and my energy totally shifted. I felt so calm and grounded in my body. So quickly explain what that is and how to do it at home.
I think the transparency is good here. We literally almost rescheduled this call because I was running so anxious today. We took a few 4-7-8s and feeling pretty good.
Feeling good, and we
It
got
does
well,
shift.
we had a few restarts to this recording,
Yeah,
but now we're here.
we're here. So don't discount those little things. And Annie and I talk about this all the time. I'll go into 4-7-8 in a second, but um the intention behind what you're doing, it really does make a difference. So even if you only have 2 to 5 minutes of free time where you want to either get a meditation in or do a quick breath work that really can shift your whole day, having intention behind taking that time for yourself, that extends far past your 5 minutes of availability. And that's a commitment to coming back to yourself. It's a commitment to showing up and to giving yourself some space, regardless about, how much space that is, how much time you have. But the intention matters for sure. And I think that's why having a conversation with yourself about what's non-negotiable or what you feel called towards,
Mm.
is really the first step. Being aware of it, practicing it, trialing how it could fit into your day. Maybe it's walk during lunch, maybe it's a skipping drinks on the Friday night and waking up and meeting a friend on the West Side Highway like me and Annie did every single week. But 470 breathing like it sounds. In for 4, hold for 7, and then out for 8 seconds. Exhale for 8 seconds. The way I usually count it, you can obviously count it in your head, but I actually usually try to count it based on my heartbeats, which is kind of another layer in to connect to my body. So when I'm counting in for 4, hold for 7, out for 8, kind of measuring it based on my heartbeat and whether or not that's actually me being more connected, it sure feels like it. I would suggest trying that out if you like. I've started a lot of mornings with if you don't have time for a whole, routine or morning meditation, even on the subway, 4 rounds of that
Mhm.
and just see if you feel the shift. It's kinda wild.
Yeah, I mean, also exhaling for 8
Yeah,
really calms you down. Like, I think when you do a quick meditation in, out, you're kinda still fight or flighty, you're racing to get through it, but that slow 8 breaths out really gives your system time to decompress, and
right.
I think another thing I get a way that I ground myself quickly is when I sit to do my meditation in the morning, it often takes me a really long time to get into a place where I can like actually regulate my breathing and I can get in touch with my body and I'm not thinking about, wanting to grab my phone and write something on my to-do list or respond to someone before I forget. I'm so racy for honestly like the first 5 minutes of meditation. And what really helps is tapping into a sensation, like focusing
Mhm.
on like, "Oh my god, my calf is really tight," or, "Oh, my throat is really tense right now. What is that trying to tell me?" And, like, accept it and be aware of it. And then once you, like, actually feel the state of your body, it's a lot easier to release your mind and move into it and do your breathing exercises. I love manifestation. Oh my god,
Yeah.
offline, Alex,
We need a whole 'nother
I'm
episode on.
manifesting some crazy stuff lately. It's actually, like, I used to
I will
not be
second this for anyone listening. Her stuff is working. It is magic.
it's
It's not magic, it's also hard work and intention, but it works.
manifesting.
We need a whole nother episode on that.
We need a full 'nother episode. I will say briefly though, the practice of it, because it sounds so woo-woo, but it's not, is you sit, as I said, body scan, regulate, do your breathing in and out, and then visualize in your calm, grounded state, and you can feel it 'cause your body gets heavy. Visualize and feel the life that you want. So maybe it's, for me, I've been manifesting my business. I'm feeling what it feels like to be like going to all these events and connecting with women and having a big platform and sharing really authentic stories on my podcast. And maybe you're envisioning what like your dream relationship feels like or a family you're going to build later. Like, what does that energy actually feel like? What do your
Mhm.
friendships feel like? Friendships are the first thing, like, oh my God, my story about Trader Joe's last night was insane.
Yeah, yeah.
You embody the energy of excitement and however it feels to you, if it feels safe and grounding and comfortable or exciting or curious or creative, you see it, but you also like feel it as if it's right now. And what's really interesting is one, it allows you to trust because when you can tap into a space where you actually envision it and feel it, you believe that you're worthy of it. You believe
Right.
that is part of your course. But the more tangible part of it is it shifts your energy. And when your energy shifts, you act different. So when you go
Yeah,
on a call, you might be like, oh, before, like, oh my God, why do I have to talk to this person? You come in with, like, tell me about you. I want to know about you. And then boom, that
yeah,
brings it to a different level. And then you have a new connection. Then you have the new friend. And that's your manifestation. Your energy changes your vibe, and your vibe changes your actions, and your actions call in the things that you're manifesting.
right.
This stuff works. We'll get into it later. But yeah,
Oh, I can't wait. We have to do another one on that.
so
I
crazy.
just in response to that, what I wanna reflect there is that at the beginning of this, you're talking about tapping into the feeling of your future life, the feeling that comes up when you're in that future relationship, when you've built your business up. What does it feel like, right? I think, that is obviously energetic, but that feeling, whatever it is, and naming it and sitting with it, feeling it in your body, that's something that you can tap into now. And that's the cool thing about manifestation. It's like, I want to feel self trust, or I want to feel grounded, or I want to feel excited. And then you can ask yourself, in what small ways right now can I connect to that feeling? Because that feeling which, that future self feeling is available to me right now. And that's how you start bringing stuff in, which I think is super cool. And I think it applies to, like we said, our like New York hustler selves. If we had spent some time doing some of this work, manifesting or connecting to how do we want to feel in our life? What matters to us? How can we connect to that right now?
Yeah.
What are the mini, tiny little steps, whether it's during a coffee chat with someone or my commute to work or the commute on the way back or the clay class I'm doing on Saturdays at the 92Y, right? Like what, which another conversation, love that. What can I tap into right now? And then you realize that like this life is available to you. These feelings are available to you. And it just shifts your intention with how to engage with life right now, which I think is a good practice for anyone, regardless of whether you think this work is woo-woo. Like if you want to feel excited and connected, look at your life right now, look at your schedule. What is one micro step you can fill into your day to feel excited,
Yes.
to connect to joy? Is it walking through the park instead of taking a taxi? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Tapping into joy. And I think also too is something I was going to ask you and kind of to get into that question is for me in my personal experience, I was, in venture cap. I do love venture capital. I shifted more to wellness venture capital, but it's not my goal is not to be like the partner at a fund anymore. I have very different vision for my life. But I had no idea what vision I had for my life at that point. When I was so disconnected from my body, I was so in my head, I was so trying to solve my health. And another part is like so much of my joy was outsourced. My joy was coming from other people telling me I was smart or getting the jobs that I wanted or being in successful rooms and prestigious places. That was not real joy. That was me not knowing what actually gave me joy. So I'm going to grab onto it from all of these external things that were actually so out of alignment with who I really am. And I think a really big shift happened for me at least is when I learned to tap into my body. I was able to figure out what joy felt like for me,
Hmm.
totally unaffiliated with success or accomplishment, or if other people would confirm, like, oh, yeah, that's good. So that should be joyful. I think this practice of moving into your body and, chronic disease is unfortunate. I hope people listening to this are not, maybe you don't feel great, or maybe you feel incredible, or maybe you do have a chronic disease. For me, and I would guess for you as well, Alex, it was almost a gateway into this deeper self discovery of like, what even is the life that you want to live? What even lights you up? What do
Oh, yeah.
you view as success? And that is the question that I want to ask you is you're doing all of this work as you're still in this career, as you're still living in New York. This work was focused on your health originally. That was kind of the motivation behind learning how to move into your body and out of your head. But where did you see shifts elsewhere in your life from starting to practice this?
Other than everywhere. Well, I want to echo that for sure. Chronic illness, in my case, in your case, absolutely a portal. Like this was, I think that whether you're experiencing something like illness or loss of a loved one or change of, maybe you lost a job, maybe you have to change cities, whatever it is, these big life things can be invitations to reorient. And in my case, it absolutely was. And I think a big shift for me came when I started to drop my obsession with the outcome of healing and connect to, like you said, how I want to feel and how I want to show up in my life. Whether or not symptoms still persisted, I started to understand that I could never be certain about these things. I could show up for myself. I could continue to work with the people that I know would help me feel good. But ultimately, the trust in myself and the alignment with every decision I made going forward, that is what mattered. The outcome of collecting more and more diagnoses or going into full remission with all of my conditions, that started to carry a little bit less weight. Didn't mean I didn't care about my health, but we've talked about this, and I'll just repeat this until the end of time. Understanding that healing was a direction and not a destination. That's a Gaber Mate quote. Dr. Gaber Mate, a line on a map and not a dot. It was in the process of returning to myself that I started to connect to what healing meant for me. And luckily, that also meant that certain symptoms slept up, certain symptoms still exist, but my relationship to them is completely different. And my relationship to, the return and the remembering and the connecting to my body, that is, I mean, that's my guiding light now, right? And
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't linear for me. It wasn't easy. I wish I could have said I just had this awesome aha moment when I was working. No, I continued to ignore these things for sure, and ultimately got so sick that I couldn't work. I'm just gonna be honest here, and I'm sure some people can relate to this. Like, I had debilitating symptoms. I couldn't look in front of a screen for more than 45 minutes without rashes and migraines and nerve pain and all this stuff. So I took a medical leave, tried to come back, thought I could just fix myself within 6 months. You know, that's not how it works. I came back, and again, my body was really talking to me, and I ended up having to quit, move out of New York, move back home. And in that process, that's where these aha moments happen. Like, I needed to hit my version of rock bottom. And obviously, our goal is to help, lessen that,
Yeah.
weight of hitting the ground, right? Or maybe help you before you hit your lowest point. Because looking back, I'm like, there's so many things that I wish I could have told myself. But ultimately, what came out of it was a completely different perspective on being in my body, completely different perspective on chronic illness and healing and what the point of it all was and how multidimensional and complex it was and how beautiful that actually is. So there's so many things I can tangent off into, but that's the
Yeah, and I think Alex and I talk about this in a future episode a bit, but when you're able to tap into your body and your intuition and you get these little subtle whispers that something isn't right for you or that this isn't an aligned environment or this isn't for my highest self, you get these little baby nudges and maybe there's a symptom that keeps repeating. Maybe it's I don't know, a friendship that just doesn't feel right. You kind of hesitate before picking up the phone or committing to a plan or a relationship that works, but maybe you could have so much more. And when we ignore these whispers, they get louder and louder and louder and they scream, and then you're redirected. I think you can't miss what's meant for you in life,
Mhm.
and you're always going to be redirected onto your path. Even if you ignore it and try and go this other way, life is going to bring you back where you're meant to be. And I think when we learn how to tap into our intuition and hear it, we can have a little bit of a softer transition back onto our path. But when we ignore it, sometimes we get very deviated back
Yeah.
to the correct path for us. And it is beautiful.
And we're human.
And we're
That
human.
happens.
And there's no exactly. And I think that, in both of our cases, certainly with you, and I'd love to get into this, but that whole journey and you faced a hard left and you ended up having to quit your job and you did have to end up moving home and you were realigned back onto the right path. And that right path was very much in your body. And I think that it has shifted the way you look at everything in life and probably has transformed so much. But I'd be curious, did you always know you wanted to start something in the wellness space? And what kind of drove you to the Wellery?
No, I did not think that I was gonna go into the wellness space. I think I happened upon it looking back, there's like I think it's like a Steve Jobs quote, "All the dots connect when you look back."
Yeah.
I was pre-med, I wanted to be a doctor, and then something shifted in college, and I realized that I didn't wanna be practicing. There was something different. There was a different layer to medicine and public health and population health and feeling good that I knew existed, and I was also connected to this idea of impact before I knew what it was. So, regardless of not knowing exactly what that meant, I knew that the pre-med path didn't make sense for me. And looking back, I'm glad that I made that change because I don't think that was the path for me. As happens in schools like the ones that we went to, "Oh, you're not pre-med? Then you better be a banker, consultant, lawyer." I'm like, "Okay, I guess I'll be a banker." And I built this kind of narrative around, "Yeah, I wanna understand how money moves and how these corporations make decisions and industries change," which is totally true, and I did learn a lot. But I always had this connection to health and sustainability and wellness that is what shifted me into the impact space, which touched affordable housing and sustainable development and jobs and skills and population health, right? So I think I've always had like a little bit of a hand in it, but it wasn't until my own long journey arose that I fell into that absolutely true. My mess is my message awareness. I'm sure you hear that, and people have heard that. I'm sure it sounds silly or annoying, but turning pain into purpose, turning my mess into my message, it is such a real thing because when you are at rock bottom, your lowest of lows, I went through so many, so many months and longer years thinking that I was dying, like that I was on my way out totally, and knowing that and how all consuming the process of trying to feel better was, I had this click and I'm like, there is no way that I don't exist in this space. I don't know what it's going to look like, but whatever I do when I am on the other side or through this a little bit more, I have to be in this space. I was so called to it, right? And now I can't think of anything else that I could be doing. There's just absolutely no way once I quit my job. I was faced with a couple options, obviously, like, okay, let's head back into finance, let's go into corporate development or something like that. Or let's take a risk and build something myself and try to show up in this new authentic way that doesn't really exist. But I knew that I was called to this space and the messages that were so potent for me in my own life to share. And I knew that they would resonate with people and that the work would become clear like, if I just kept following that, and I know you can relate to that, like, the mission is so strong because of our lived experience
Yeah.
that I have ultimate trust that the Wellery will continue to take shape over time.
Absolutely. This is built from you, from your experiences, from your intuition, from your desire to share what you've learned and to really serve others and support others along their journey. And I think that the journey that you went through taught you how to tap into that intuition. And it's just, you look at things and there's a silver lining in everything. Like, obviously, you would have loved to not have these conditions and not suffer or be uncomfortable and spend years trying to figure it out. But that did give you the ability and the tool set to learn how to tap into your body. And now you're building the Wellery from such an authentic and aligned place. And it's driven so deeply by your own intuition. Would this ever be in existence if you didn't go through that?
Absolutely.
Well, can you just quickly remind us what the Wellery is about and where people can connect with you?
Yeah, definitely. So the Wellery, again, it really is supposed to serve as a resource and a mirror. It's the type of support that I really wished I had when I was in the depths of my own healing journey. Like that girl in New York in 2020, 2021, she could have used the Wellery. And so that's what I keep reorienting towards that younger version of myself. But it's really a place for people navigating similarly complex chronic health issues or just weird symptoms in general, as well as people just trying to navigate all of the very loud noise, fusing noise of the modern wellness world. The mission being there is power in returning to your own inner wisdom, your own compass. And what I built the Wellery around is this idea of the well, right? We kind of touched on it earlier, but we all have this well that is innate to us that we can tap into at any time. And being aware that we are abundantly resourced. We can connect to ourselves. We can return to ourselves again and again. And when we're anchored, we don't have to fear the uncertainty in life. And what's cool about that is what I consider to be included in this well. Things like your intuition, the symptom messengers, your innate strengths, the lived experiences that you've had. It's also something that's very much an alive, living resource, right? So treating it as such, treating it with respect, adding the tools, the practices, the people, the healers, the friends you lean on into that well, knowing that those are things that you can tap into to bring yourself closer to yourself, right? Or to ground yourself. So the idea of the Wellery being, can I help guide you back to remembering that that resource exists and let that be a compass for you as you navigate whatever it is in life, whether it's just trying to feel good, whether it's trying to navigate a complex health challenge or just life in general.
These principles apply to life in general. Like, you build your well, and your well is your internal toolkit to navigate conflict, adversity, life's transitions, illness, discomfort, really anything. It's like figuring out who you are at your core is the way that,
Right.
I've always interpreted it. But tell us, Alex, where can everybody find you?
You can find me on my website, it's thewellery.co. If you want to book a discovery call, you can do so there. You can also find me on Instagram, thewellery.co, and on Substack. That's thewellery.substack.com. And you can book discovery calls through all of those platforms. I do a newsletter every Sunday, and you can keep up to date on Instagram as well.
Amazing. Awesome. Well, thank you, Alex. This was so much fun. And we will have Alex on for several more episodes coming up. So stay tuned. But thank you all for listening. Thank you for being here, Alex, and we'll chat soon.
Thanks for having me. This was a ton of fun.
Bye. Thanks for listening to Let's Feel Good. If today's episode helped you feel more clear, empowered, or inspired to take action on your health, I'd love if you'd subscribe, leave a review, or share it with a friend who's on their wellness journey too. You can find today's show notes, links, and extra resources over on Substack at letsfeelgood.substack.com, and follow along on Instagram at Let's Feel Good Club for more real-life wellness tips in between episodes. Because how you live determines how you feel, and we all deserve to feel amazing. See you next time.